Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presta Abhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Chadesha Tarne Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchkalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All right, so here we go, devotees, into the second half of Bhagavad Gita. It is all downhill from here. Means it's easier. It goes faster from here. So we finished the 9th chapter last night. We spent 6 evenings on the 9th chapter. It's really very important, and there's some just really amazing, wonderful, wonderful things there. And now we're beginning the 10th chapter, and there's more nectar. It's all nectar, of course. We can say that, why not? It's all nectar. But some nectar is more nectarian than other nectar. Something like that. So in the, what would it be? First third, maybe first 1/3 of this chapter, it's still really that a similar mood to what we were reading last night, the night before, the last 2 or even 3 evenings actually. Krishna at different times revealing very intimate aspects of his own nature, his own feelings about devotees, about devotional service. It's quite very personal, very wonderful. Particularly what we call the Chatushloki Bhagavad Gita, which is verses 8, 9, 10, and 11, which we'll see how it goes, but I'm not really expecting that we'll get to those tonight. I'm expecting that we will do verses 1 to 7, but we will see. We will see how it goes. So, and then Krishna is going to explain after that, means after maybe verse 15, or actually from verse 19 onwards, Krishna explains more of his opulences and special, amazing features like this. Okay, so let us begin. I'll just inform you what are the 4 sections. The 4 sections which make up this chapter 10. Yes. Hare Krishna. First section is this section we're going to go into right now, from verse 1 to verse 7, and we call it One Who Understands Krishna's Unknowable Position Serves Him. Or you could say, one who knows Krishna's unknowable position serves him. But the idea, anyway, we'll see, because that's what we're focusing on tonight. Krishna explains in different ways, giving a number of different examples, how so many people don't understand him for different reasons. And so, in other words, he's such a unique person, such an extraordinary person. Okay, then second section is the Chatushloki Bhagavad Gita from verse 8 to verse 11. 8, 9, 10, 11. Chatushloki, Chatu means four in Sanskrit, and Shloki means verses. So in other words, it's Bhagavad Gita in 4 verses. Then the third section is from verse 12 to verse 18, and we call that Arjuna's acceptance and request. You know, of course, obviously we'll see what that means when we get there, but basically Arjuna, after hearing Chatushloki Bhagavad Gita, you could say the whole message of the Bhagavad Gita in 4 verses, then he accepts, finally. I mean, there's been this acceptance from time to time by Arjuna, but this is like conclusive acceptance by Arjuna of Krishna and of Krishna's supreme position and his, Arjuna's, position as the humble servant. But then there's also request. Request is that he wants to understand more clearly the unique position of Krishna. Help me to understand how you're just so great. Help me to understand that more clearly. So that's 12 to 18. And then finally, long section from verse 19 to verse 42, which is the end of the chapter, 19 to 42, and Lord Krishna explains his opulences, more of his opulences, special features of his nature, which are very striking and very impressive. And after hearing which, Arjuna and anyone, including us, should feel that, oh, Krishna is so amazing, I must surrender to him. Okay, so let us go in to the first section from verse 1 to verse 7. One who understands Krishna's unknowable position serves him, from verse 1 to verse 7. And so basically Krishna here in these verses will reveal some important information about himself to Arjuna, which will inspire Arjuna and us to surrender to him. So there are actually a couple of subsections. We've divided these 7 verses up a bit. First subsection is from verse 1 to verse 3. And the subject matter there is this, that anyone knowing Krishna as the unborn Lord and the source of all the sages and demigods and whatever else. So anyone knowing Krishna like that is undeluded and free from all sins. Anyone knowing Krishna as the unborn Lord and the source of all sages and demigods is undeluded and free from all sins. Okay. Right, so verse 1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Listen again, O mighty-armed Arjuna, because you are my very dear friend. For your benefit, I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained." Wow. Just when we thought we'd got the most confidential knowledge, here now we're going further. And I'll read the other two verses also. Verse 2, verse 3. So verse 2. "Neither the hosts of demigods, nor the great sages know my origin or opulences, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and sages." And verse 3, "He who knows me as the unborn, as the beginningless, as the supreme Lord of all the worlds, he only, undeluded among men, is freed from all sins." Very important, isn't it? That's just something really amazing. Okay, so let's go through these verses. There's all sorts of interesting points. Verse 1. Anyone knowing, verse 1, excuse me. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Listen again, O mighty-armed Arjuna, because you're my dear friend. For your benefit, I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained." So, after Arjuna heard those last several verses, you remember from last night, those last several verses, the last verses of the 9th chapter, well, I think Krishna had Arjuna's attention. Sometimes people, when you're giving a class, well, as a person who has given many, thousands of classes, and just regularly, used to be every day. I mean, it is now, isn't it? It's at least once a day. Anyway, as someone who's given plenty of classes, more than your average devotee, I would say, I do know that to keep the attention of the audience is sometimes not easy. Sometimes devotees have something on their mind. Some important thing is happening in their lives, whatever it is. Or sometimes they're just tired. There's all sorts of things can happen which cause a devotee, when he or she is in class, to become distracted and not really give full attention. and they can end up, sometimes you see, it's not uncommon these days, they're checking the telephone. That's one of the more recent ones in the last few years. Prior to that, they're just looking out the window or whatever, just something or other. So how to keep the attention of the devotees when giving class, and Krishna is giving class to Arjuna. He really is. How to keep the attention? Well, when you discuss things like what we discussed last night, tends to keep the attention of devotees. There are other ways. Sometimes when devotees are like dozing off, falling asleep, then sometimes a creative class giver will start talking about, don't mind me saying it please, something to do with sex life. It's very relevant to Krishna consciousness in certain extremely important ways. And before you know, you've got the attention of the devotees. Anyway, the thing is here that Krishna has told Arjuna, that Bhuya Shrinu, Bhuya Eva Mahabaho, Shrinu Me. Again, Bhuya means again. You can see in your Bhagavad Gitas. Bhuya means again, and Shrinu, of course, as we read chapter 7, verse 1, touch Trinu. Trinu, it's the same word, just there's a little variation because of spelling formalities called Sandhi. So after what Arjuna heard, what we went through last night, I just can't imagine how any sincerely interested person would lose their attention. But still, Lord Krishna says, Bhuya eva mahabaho shrinu me. Listen to me, hear me, again, as if Arjuna needed prompting. I really don't think he did at all, but because what Krishna is about to say is, just look again at the verse, Shrinu me paramam vacha. Paramam means supreme and vacha means instruction. So you listen to my supreme instruction, as Prabhupada translates the verse. I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I've already explained. That's hard to imagine how, but that's what's going to happen. Yeah. So this is all going to increase the effect of all the confidential knowledge that Krishna has just given, and he's going to give more, and everything's just going to increase. And Prabhupada, it's not mentioned here specifically, really, but Srila Prabhupada did encourage or emphasize, he stressed, that we have to hear everything about Krishna, not just about his conjugal pastimes. We have to hear about his killing the demons too. We have to hear about his creating this world and how he's managing things, as we read the other night, from a little distance, but he's there. He's on top of things. We have to read all these things about Krishna and not just be selective. Not just be selective, but hear everything. And this will cleanse our hearts. And when we do come across, and I hesitate to say higher level things, but more intimate things like the rasa dance and Krishna's relationships with the gopis and his wives also, the queens in Dwaraka, then we'll be ready for that. Then we'll be ready for that. So we have to hear, and we have to really get a taste for hearing everything about Krishna, so that whenever there's any genuine, bona fide Krishna Katha, we can sit down and just get absorbed, because we've cultivated an attraction and attachment for hearing the glories of Krishna in whatever way, in all sorts of ways. Anyway, into the purport. You'll see there, paragraph 1, actually Srila Prabhupada focuses on the use of the term Bhagavan, which is there, of course, it's Vyasadeva who actually wrote Bhagavad Gita down. He's putting this in so we know who's going to speak, because sometimes Krishna speaks, sometimes Arjuna. It goes back and forth. But here now, he wants, because this is very important. So he says, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. And this term Bhagavan we've mentioned already. It is sort of, you could say, like an honorific. It is a term used for addressing a person which naturally, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. An honorific is a term for addressing a person which naturally glorifies. Naturally glorifies. Like, a simple example, in a court, a law court, then the judge may be Mr. Smith, Mr. Anybody, Mr. Naidu, Mr. Patel, just Mr. Anybody, just the same sort of family name that everybody has more or less, just another family name. But in the court, he's addressed as Your Honor. So this is directly an honorific. It's a term of address which naturally glorifies, naturally gives special respect to the person being addressed. Just like, I'll give you another example, in our usages that we have initiated devotees, there's such and such das or such and such Devi Dasi, Krishna Das, Radha Devi Dasi, you all know that. Now, to use you can just call them Krishna Das, Radha Devi Dasi, nothing wrong with it. But to use honorifics, you would say Krishna Das Prabhu. Like this. Means master. It's an honorific. It's giving respect. Or for a sannyasi, the name is such and such Swami. Like here, sitting right in front of me, is His Holiness Ram Govinda Swami. And there's nothing wrong with him being addressed just like that. But the honorific that we use is Maharaj. Yes, Ram Govinda Maharaj. We're offering respect. Whereas Swami, it's just the name, the title of the ashram. Or the spiritual master is not just addressed, particularly if he's a sannyasi, not just addressed even as Maharaj, but as Guru Maharaj. So in this way, honor is offered, respect is offered. So it's possible, it would have been possible when Vyasadeva wrote this down, or he actually got Ganesh to write it down, he could have said, instead of saying Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, he could have said Sri Krishna Uvacha, because that's Krishna's name. Sometimes we ask children, what is Krishna's name? And every time they just get bewildered. And they suggest maybe Gopal. But Krishna's name is Krishna. But Bhagavan is an honorific. It means he who possesses all opulences in full. So it's more like an honorific, it's more like a title than just, a typical name like Krishna. Is more like a typical name. When Krishna was a little boy, when Mother Yashoda called him, to my knowledge, she never one time said, Bhagavan, come here. Never. She said Krishna, she said Gopal, she said Govinda. There were different names she used, but she never said Bhagavan. Come here, Ajal Bhagavan, Yaha. Right. All right, so Prabhupada basically devotes the whole first paragraph to just pointing out that the importance, the significance of Krishna being addressed in the Sanskrit, right at the beginning, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, how significant it is. And so what is it? What does it mean? Well, it means, as stated here, one who is full in 6 opulences, and Prabhupada lists them out: full strength, full fame, full wealth, knowledge, beauty, and renunciation. So the person who is full in those, has all 6 fully, is called Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada basically devotes the first paragraph to that. And here's a couple of just the little points here from Baladev Vijayabhushan Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Baladev Vijayabhushan says in his commentary on this verse, in the previous several chapters, bhakti has been described along with intermittent descriptions of the Lord's powers. Occasionally they've been described. Now in this chapter, in order to manifest and increase that bhakti, the Lord will describe in detail his specific extraordinary vibhutis, or opulences, which were previously briefly discussed. So he's going to get into it more in detail. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, by knowing the powers of the Lord, one understands that the Lord is worthy of worship. That's important. These words, then speaking as if Krishna is speaking, these words are even superior to what I've spoken previously. I speak these words to you in order to cause you astonishment. In order to astonish you. Wow. Krishna. That's amazing. So in the second paragraph, Prabhupada basically, he emphasizes how we have to hear, touch trinu, as we've read here. Bhuya eva mahabaho shrinu me paramam vacha. It's so important to hear, and when you hear, you should hear in the association of devotees. As Prabhupada says, that will enhance your devotional service. Discourses in the society of devotees can take place only among those who are really anxious to be in Krishna consciousness. Then it becomes very vivid and powerful and absorbing. And Prabhupada says, others cannot take part in such discourses. And then the Lord says clearly, the Lord clearly tells Arjuna that because Arjuna is very dear to him, for his benefit, such discourses are taking place. Okay. Because you are filled with prema, priyamanaya. Priyamanaya is the term. In the second to last line of the Sanskrit, yatteham priyamanaya, because you are very dear to me. Yes. All right, and now the second verse. The second verse. Neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and sages. So, okay, it's very hard to understand Krishna because he's transcendental. He's beyond this material world. And you cannot really apply material conceptions to him. Not in truly meaningful ways. As a result, it's very few people understand Krishna, really few. Now, the demigods and sages, they come from Krishna. And Krishna's saying that even them, even they don't really understand my origin and opulences because, and he gives a reason, because in every respect I am the source of them. Now, this sort of theme, this idea, is going to come up in the next few verses also. That, in principle, that when people, when someone is the origin of someone else, then the one who has come from the person who's the origin, it's difficult for them to understand the person who is the origin of them very easily and very nicely. And you can just say, like children don't understand their parents so much. I mean, they may understand their personality, but their background, their history, their upbringing, the relationship of their father with their mother, and the intricacies of their relationship, because there are always significant intricacies there. The children don't know about these things because the parents are their source. And due to being in that position as source, They're kind of out of the reach, at least in many important ways. Not absolutely, obviously, but in many important ways. Okay, so Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he adds a little conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. Arjuna says, well, the demigods may not know because they're absorbed in material pleasure, but the sages are not, so they must know. But Lord Krishna answers, no, they also don't know me. Because I am the cause of all of them in all ways. They do not know about my birth. Just as the sons cannot know about the birth of the Father. Anyway, if you think about it, I think you'll get the idea. You follow. Anyway, this is what he says. So, because I'm the cause of all of them in all ways, they do not know about my birth, just as the sons cannot know about the birth of the Father. Therefore, if we want to understand Krishna or gain some knowledge about Krishna, we have to hear from him or from his devotees. And verse 3, he who knows me as the unborn, as the beginningless, as the supreme Lord of all the worlds, he only, undeluded among men, is freed from all sins. So here, Krishna is further making distinctions between himself and the sages and the demigods from verse 2. Yeah. So, for example, well, he refers to himself as unborn. The Sanskrit is aja. Janma means birth. Like Janmastami means the birth anniversary of Krishna on the Astami, on the 8th day of the moon. So, Krishna is aja. He's not born, he's unborn. And he's beginningless. In Sanskrit, he is anadi. Anadi. Adi means first. For Krishna, there was no first time when there he was for the first time. So he's anadi. Anyway, let me just use the English. So, Brahma is also known as unborn. Because he came out of the lotus flower. What can you say? There was no mother, and apparently there are just no parents around. So Brahma is unborn, like Krishna. But Krishna is beginningless. Brahma is not beginningless. He had a beginning. Then the sages are also unborn, and the sages are beginningless. They're also unborn, they're also beginningless. But Krishna, as the Sanskrit of verse 3 says, the Sanskrit says, Loka Maheshvaram, or as we've read previously in a previous chapter, Sarva Loka Maheshvaram. He's the supreme controller of all the planets. So the sages are unborn and beginningless. The demigods are not. Brahma's unborn, but he's not beginningless. The great sages are unborn and beginningless. So are they equal to Krishna, who's unborn and beginningless? No, because he is Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. He's the Lord of all the planets, the whole creation. But the demigods are Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. They're the controllers, to whatever degree they can. They're controlling the universe. But still, the demigods, like Brahma, even though most of them are not Ajja, and none of them are Anadi, it's only Brahma who's Ajja, who's unborn, but he's not beginningless. So like this, Krishna's position is unique, incomparable. So Krishna's saying here in verse 3, anyone who knows me like that becomes liberated, delivered from this world. Yes, so, and Krishna uses the word mam, me. Yo mam ajam anadim cha, me, to distinguish himself from Paramatma. Because he and Paramatma, there are differences. Yes. In that Krishna apparently, in a certain sense, takes birth. So you can say that this verse fulfills chapter 4, verse 9, if you remember. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvadaha tato man tatvato gyatva vishate tad anantaram. That those who understand my appearance and activities, the transcendental nature of that, they don't take birth again in this world. Now here we have a special question for those of you who are doing Bhakti Shastri. Just listen to this. It's based on this chapter 10, verse 3. But it's a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's Adi Leela, chapter 7, verse 7. Adi Leela 7:7. Krishna, the reservoir of all pleasure, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, the Supreme Controller. No one is greater than or equal to Sri Krishna, yet he appears as the son of Maharaj Nanda. So you may be asked, what verse was mentioned in the class from Chaitanya Charitamrita about Krishna's supremacy? No one's equal to him or greater than him. It's Adi Leela chapter 7, verse 7. So let's carry on into the second subsection, which is verses 4, 5, and 6. And we give this subsection the title, All Qualities and Attitudes are Created by Krishna. Even the progenitors come from his mind, means those from whom the universal population comes. Yeah. So Krishna is just emphasizing his extraordinary position. Okay, let's read these verses. So verses 4 and 5 are together. Intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt and delusion, forgiveness, truthfulness, control of the senses, control of the mind, happiness and distress, birth, death, fear, fearlessness, non-violence, equanimity, satisfaction, austerity, charity, fame, and infamy. all these various qualities of living beings are created by me alone. So they're all important qualities in different ways, different phenomena. But the thing is, you cannot know Krishna through these directly. Why? Because he is their source. He is their source. And like we already said at some length, when someone is the source of someone else, then, at least in certain very important respects, the one who came from the original one cannot fully understand the original one. Yes. So, let's just go through, not the whole purport, but you can go through the whole purport and see how Prabhupada explains all of these. It's very interesting, but let's us now just go through a few of them and see how Prabhupada explains them. Intelligence refers to the power to analyze things in their proper perspective. Knowledge refers to understanding what is spirit and what is matter. That's real knowledge. To just understand one material thing from another or analyze some material thing, it's not in the absolute sense real essential knowledge. Freedom, asamoha, freedom from doubt and delusion, can be achieved when one is not hesitant and when he understands the transcendental philosophy. Slowly but surely he becomes free from bewilderment. Nothing should be accepted blindly. Everything should be accepted with care and with caution. Then kshama, tolerance and forgiveness, should be practiced. One should be tolerant and excuse the minor offenses of others. This is not the only place in Bhagavad Gita. I'll point out the other place when we get there. It's going to be after some weeks, where this definition of tolerance is given. Tolerance means to excuse the minor offenses of others. Satyam, truthfulness, means that facts should be presented as they are for the benefit of others. Facts should not be misrepresented. According to social conventions, it's said that one can speak the truth only when it's palatable to others, but that is not truthfulness. The truth should be spoken in a straightforward way so that others will understand exactly what the facts are. And you know, you can go through all of them. I won't go through all of them. But what I will do in regard to forgiveness, we do a seminar on forgiveness. We did one on humility. We do one on forgiveness. It's such an important quality. And here's a little excerpt from Mahabharata about forgiveness. It's Prahlad Maharaj. Well, Bali Maharaj approaches Prahlad and asks, which is actually meritorious? What is actually good? Forgiveness or the use of strength? And Prahlad answers. So listen to this. Neither forgiveness nor the use of prowess is meritorious in all situations. If one were to always forgive, then his servants, dependents, enemies, and even strangers would disrespect him. When one always forgives, Then mean-minded servants gradually steal away all of his wealth and fail to respond to his commands. The wife of one who always forgives begins to act just as she pleases, and then, along with the servants, she takes to all kinds of vices. On the other hand, one who simply punishes and never forgives soon finds himself bereft of all friends. Indeed, everyone comes to hate such an unforgiving person, and when there's the slightest opportunity, they do something to harm him. Therefore, the conclusion is that prowess means like strength, and forgiveness should be exhibited at the proper times. Listen to this. This is interesting. My dear Bali, the following persons should be forgiven. One who has done nice service in the past, even if guilty of a grave fault. One who offends simply due to ignorance or foolishness. One who is a first-time offender. One who has committed some wrong against his will. In addition, other offenders may sometimes be forgiven just to create a good public image. But the following persons should not be forgiven. One who is knowingly offended and yet claims to be innocent, even if his offense is slight. And a second offender, no matter how small his crime. Anyway, interesting. Okay, let's just now go on to verse 6. The 7 great sages, and before them the 4 other great sages, and the Manus, the progenitors of mankind, come from me, born from my mind. And all the living beings populating the various planets descend from them. So what's the point there? That therefore they don't understand him also. The 7 great sages and their 4 other great sages. Then there's the Manus, the heads of humanity. Krishna says they come from me, come from my mind. And then all the other living entities in the universe come from them. So this is the theme in these first verses, that all these different persons and even these different things come from Krishna. Therefore, the people being referred to cannot understand Krishna fully, and you cannot understand Krishna fully by using those particular qualities and attributes and so on. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada goes through a whole, Prabhupada says, the Lord is giving a genealogical synopsis of the universal population. Brahma's the original creature born from the energy of the Supreme Lord, and so on and so on and so on. So, and this is the point, that all these people and the people who come from all these people cannot understand Krishna because he is the source, or even the source of their source. Yeah. So to understand Krishna is difficult. And then finally, verse 7, well, the heading, we give it a little heading here. Those who know Krishna's glories engage in devotional service. Because the knowledge is not different from Krishna, it increases one's devotion for him, or gives one devotion for him if one has none. So here's verse 7. One who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mine engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this there's no doubt. So the basic point is that after hearing from Krishna, or from those who have heard from Krishna, the bona fide knowledge in parampara, then one may at least get some nice understanding of Krishna's opulence, his mystic power, even of his appearance in this world. Not that you can understand Krishna totally, from top to bottom, right to left, and just everything. But you can get a nice understanding up to your capacity. Up to your capacity. You can get a nice understanding of Krishna's appearance, activities, opulence, and mystic power. And when you get a nice understanding through hearing from him nicely, then you become inspired to render service. Krishna says such a devotee engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this there's no doubt. Because understanding these things will give us more faith in the Lord, more understanding, and then more appreciation and more faith in the Lord. So now, to make this even clearer, to really make it clear, Krishna is going to speak the Chatushloki Bhagavad Gita. Let me just read something from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He who knows the vibhuti, he's speaking as if Krishna. He who knows the vibhutis, the opulences, the displays of power, of which I will speak in summary, and who knows Bhakti Yoga, then becomes endowed with even stronger faith, thinking, this alone is the highest truth, because my master Krishna has said so. Then he becomes endowed with unwavering Bhakti Yoga, which is characterized by knowledge of my true nature. There is no doubt about this. Yes. So Srila Prabhupada makes this point in the purport here of verse 7, that when one is firmly convinced of these things, he accepts Krishna with great faith and without any doubt, and engages in devotional service. All this particular knowledge is required in order to increase one's interest in the loving devotional service of the Lord. One should not neglect to understand fully how great Krishna is, for by knowing the greatness of Krishna, one will be able to be fixed in sincere devotional service. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.